Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm glad you're here at our monthly program. My name is Ken Soban. I'm the president of AltaCal, and got a good crowd tonight. How about sightings? Anyone see any really neat birds or? Yeah.
It was just an unusual situation. I live along the Chico Creek, and a mob of crows showed up, just a few at a time, and they sent out a call. And then they were going after something in my redwood tree, and I didn't know what. I was busy working on something. I was checked into it, didn't see anything, and then it rained on Thursday, and on Friday we found the neighborhood red-shouldered hawk had been killed by the crows.
Wow.
Yeah. And
So it's a murder of crows, and you can see why it's called a murder of crows. Murder is bad. Yeah.
And that same hawk probably had
Wow.
been the one that killed the two fledgling
Oh.
great horned owls 2 years before.
Wow.
So it's sort of a hard life out there.
Yeah. Vengeance says the crow, right? Anyone else have any interesting sightings? Been out? Yeah, Paul.
Well, I was riding my bike on Sunday, nice and cold with very little rain. I saw an American kestrel on the wire, and I don't get to see those too often.
Yeah. Nice. It's always nice to see a falcon.
Yeah.
Yeah, this morning on my way to work, well, actually, right when I got to work, I work in Oroville. I teach full-time middle school science. But when I got to work, just over the quad or the parking lot, outside the parking lot, I could see a falcon. I couldn't tell. It was low light. It was, peregrine or a prairie, but it was a bigger falcon. So it's always fun to see a falcon. So anyone else want to share anything? Yeah.
Nesting bald eagles.
Nice. Nesting bald eagles at the Sac Refuge. So I want to introduce tonight's speaker. I had the last name, Cynthia Perrine. Yeah, Cynthia Perrine and Kim Armstrong from Northern California Regional Land Trust. And they're talking about exploring avian monitoring on conserved lands. So excellent. Looking forward to the program. If you want to clip this and then let me know when you want to start the PowerPoint.
All right, so I'm going to talk about exploring avian monitoring, but I'm going to introduce myself a little bit first. I also want to let you guys know that Silas Osborne is our new AmeriCorps member. Silas's first day. So this is Silas, and it's her first day with the Land Trust today. Yay. And I think she's been, how long, when did you move to Paradise?
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
About 2 weeks ago from Oregon.
Yeah, very good California.
Loves birds. All right. And then you'll hear more about Kim later, but I wanted to identify Silas. All right. And so we'll be sharing how you can partner with your land trust and protect working and wildlands forever. So I will start with a brief introduction about myself, which is not unlike the story of many of you here in Chico. It's a place rich in natural resources, recreational opportunities, and livelihoods of life that I feel is unique and unparalleled. So that's what I'm working to save. All of those special places and spaces that draw people and cultures to this space since time immemorial. The story of who I am begins right here in Chico, and it's in 3 parts. I was born and raised here. I was raised by a liberal arts studies educated stay-at-home mom and a wildlife biologist dad. My parents moved to Chico from Bakersfield, and they moved here for my dad's work opportunity, and he was an upland game bird biologist with the California Department of Fish and Game. They already had my 2 older brothers, and I was born a year later. So with these nice upland game birds, it was not quail. Quail did not bring him to Chico. Anybody want to shout out what job that might have been? It was an upland game state mandate for the Department of Fish and Game, and the year was 1971.
Turkey.
Good job. It was turkey. So hang on. We're gonna have a little bit of fun here today. All right, and there's gonna be some turkeys flying in here in a minute. I swear, if I can do it right. Goodness. Oh, animations. It won't even go forward without the turkeys. There we go. All right. Thank you for your patience. There we go. All right. So after graduating from Chico High, I earned a BS in environmental biology and a minor in botany from UC Davis. This is what I spent most of my time doing, volunteering for anybody who would take me out in the field and let me play with wildlife. So this was with California Energy Commission. And hang on a minute. Anyone? What bird is this? No. Swainson's hawk, yes. So Swainson's hawk, and this is the early 90s, and so they were just figuring out that Swainson's hawk, they all thought they went to South America and some of them went to Mexico, and I was working with those researchers at the time. So you get to work with a lot of cool stuff if you don't care about getting paid. So that led me back to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. I worked there for a couple years as a student assistant and scientific aide and worked for the Sierra Nevada Ecosystem Project. So we were basically mapping, like actually using a digitizer, not like the easy stuff people do today. And it just took me back to wanting to go to grad school. So I came back to Chico. Through Omicron, I met a couple of important people, including this big galoot. His name is Jay Boggiato. This photo is from the 1998 Zooarchaeology and Field Ecology course, kind of changed my life, where Jay advised my project and I was assessing osprey prey through osteologic survey and assessment. So, what's that? Yes. Ah, glorious place. Somewhere along the way, the Wild Turkey Project became too political for me. So I switched to a much less controversial subject. Fire ecology. So that was up at Lassen Volcanic National Park, and that's when I met this guy who's now my husband, and he was studying Sierra Nevada red fox in the Lassen region. So that's where the second chapter in Chico closes. As I finished my graduate studies and I headed back to work in the real world, I ended up in Department of Parks and Recreation in Big Sur. The first day at work, 6 juvenile condors flew over my office from Ventana Wildlife Society. I was like, oh, this is my life. This is great. And so I got to apply my knowledge, skills, and abilities, and I left my now husband up at Lassen, but eventually we aligned ourselves to live in the same place. So what I really did is I started doing all these workshops, and this is me misnetting a Townsend's big-eared bat. That's before it was listed. But we did a lot of workshops where we take a bunch of biologists out in the field who needed to learn how to do these field techniques, because when you're in college now, you don't get to actually touch wildlife very much. So we did a lot of training courses like that. And so I did this bat ecology and field techniques course for like 15 years. And I really liked working with mist nets, and I decided to start working with birds. So this is one of these projects. This is from a K through 13 conservation education project in San Luis Obispo. So we took youth out. So we had a little mixed group of kids. We took them out once a week, every Monday morning with college students. They'd come out, we'd take them on a walk to their open space that they could access from their school. And we just teach them like how to look. We didn't actually tell them what they were seeing. We actually taught them observation skills. So right now we're looking at some birds here in the distance, and this kid's learning how to use binoculars. So this was our Learning to Use Binoculars Day, and this is Freddie Oddie, a city biologist. There's like 2 cities left in California that have a wildlife biologist. This is one, San Luis Obispo, and the other is Davis. We don't have one, I don't think, anymore in Chico. What's that? That's in Laguna Lake Park in San Luis Obispo. So the one in the distance is called Black Mountain. Yeah, so let's see. John and I created a family that includes 3 children. Let's see, I have some things flying in here. And we have been family birders across the continent. This is the first place our family went birding with everybody wearing binoculars, and that was out at Sanibel Island. This is our son. He's now 13. That's my daughter there on the right, Miss Netting with Point Blue, Conservation Science in Swanton Pacific. My kids are like, it's really kind of hard because they think this is just normal life, that you just like go out and play with wildlife all the time. And now they're in college and they realize, oh, we kind of grew up a little differently. This is actually bat netting we caught. We always catch a lot of night birds when we do bat mist netting. This is Shannon, my 20-year-old, and this is her actually extracting her first bat from mist net, and it turned out to be a Townsend's big-eared bat. So anyway, we really enjoyed taking our family out in the woods, and so I've been spending a lot of time doing that while my husband was a professor at Cal Poly. All right, so I wasn't really paying close attention to Chico. I had this whole other life. Husband's a professor, we're taking our kids all over the world and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't really paying attention when the campfire happened, but I was really traumatized by that because I felt really helpless. And that really redefined my concept of home and questioned my sense of place. And so then the Dixie Fire burned 69% of Lassen Park. And that impacted both mine and my husband's research inquiries. So that was it. We up and moved back to Chico in 2022. Left. Our kids are still really mad at us for leaving the Central Coast. But they really like Salmon Hole, Bear Hole, all these great places up here now. So anyway, it was his sabbatical and I could take an interim role, which led me to the land trust. And I've been here nearly 3 years now, and it just feels great to be home. So that's my long story to lead into who's the land trust. We're a nonprofit organization. We were founded and headquartered right here in Chico in 1990. That's for reference, the year I graduated from high school. So they act with impact toward community-informed goals for land and multi-benefit conservation, strategically achieved through collaborative partnerships with private landowners, agency and municipal center staff, tribes, community, and nonprofit organizations like Altica. In short, we work to protect working and wild lands forever. On the slide is our official mission. Were you helping to create this mission, Paul? He's like, yeah. To assist landowners, communities, and public agencies to voluntarily protect land and other natural resources. Our vision and scope of work includes environmental education for people of all ages, hosting events that bring people together on the land, and increasing public access to wild nature and outdoor recreation. So the main tool we use is a conservation easement held in perpetuity. And that is a legal agreement between a landowner and a land trust or another entity. And it extinguishes development and subdivision rights. It records restrictions thereof into the deed permanently, and that objective is retaining attributes, practices, or features that are important for conservation, water quality, habitat, or ecosystem function, including bird habitat. In a conservation easement, landowners are compensated through private, state, or federal grant programs and retain the use and productivity and income potential from that property and their operations, and can sell, transfer, or donate their property to a successor. So they just can't build on it. They can't subdivide it. They can't change it into Disneyland. That successor is also held to the terms of the conservation easement. So it's a very powerful tool, and it's been tested quite a bit. So our service region covers Butte, Glen, and Tehama counties, so that's 6,000 square miles in the North State. It goes from the Sierra Cascade Crest across the Sacramento River Valley into the eastern slopes in the northern coastal range. And we're oriented around these 3 focal points. We prioritize land important to our region's agricultural economy, ecological health, and quality of life. We offer guided hikes to our Deer Creek Preserve as a public outreach and host family days on working ranches, as well as our annual harvest dinner. So this is 1990 protected, nearly 41,000 acres. This is 23 miles of streams, 16,000 acres of oak woodland, grasslands, and pine forests, and 24,000 acres of productive agricultural lands with high quality soils. Notable properties include Llano Seco, Abbey of New Clairvaux, and Berkeley Olive Grove. We also hold 5 easements on PG&E lands and co-manage conservation values with them. In all, our stewardship endowment funds annual monitoring across all 41 properties. So this is what our service region looks like, showing our conserved properties with agricultural parcels in green and forested in blue. Now, it looks like there's a lot of space left unprotected, but fortunately, we don't do anything without partners. So this is what it looks like when you take in the partner. So everything in green or blue, those are conserved lands. The only squishy spot is some of those are federally conserved lands. And we all know that federal lands have been really challenged recently. And so let's keep an eye on that. But conservation easement, as we're learning, and other tools are actually a lot stronger than ownership by a government agency at this point. So there's a few gaps. I want to point out a couple we're working to close. If you see there, the town of Paradise. So if you imagine Paradise going all the way toward Red Bluff, there's this really nice connectivity that basically I say goes all the way from Paradise to where 99 hits where Deer Creek crosses 99. We're trying to make that one contiguous conserved pathway basically for deer and other migrating wildlife. Yeah, so it's pretty exciting stuff we got going on. So now I'm here and this is what I do. And since joining the Land Trust 3 years ago, I built organizational capacity, diversified some funding sources, reconnected community partnerships, and initiated new ones. I've developed roles and responsibilities that would attract great people to come work with us, staff and volunteers, and local artists. And so this is something we tried to launch this year. We're really going to be more intertwined with arts, both visual and music. This is Christian Garcia. You've seen his murals around town. He does beautiful work. And he painted this mural in front of our eyes as the cranes flew into the adjacent field at our harvest dinner last month. So this will be actually featured at the Snow Goose Festival art show at Monca, and then we'll be auctioning it off. It's actually 2 really big pieces that fit together. It's gorgeous. And the proceeds will go to our Oak Woodland Acquisition Fund. All right, so as I've been working with all these folks, I just want to say that we have launched a few other people into the world. So we have a GIS specialist who came to us 2 years ago, and he just got a job last week full-time working for a couple of consulting firms. So that's another thing we're trying to do is bring good people from Chico State who just got their degree and they have a lot of passion and give them some place to apply their skills. Because closing an easement is just the beginning of the partnership of this land stewardship in perpetuity. And so it's my pleasure to introduce you to my colleague, one of my favorite partners in birding shenanigans or trivia nights, where mostly we tried to pick the craziest bird-related name that nobody would understand except for us because we're bird nerds. Kim Armstrong. Kim joined Northern California Regional Land Trust in mid-August. She'll conduct our annual monitoring this year and coordinate some exciting private lands restoration and research planning to help birds. So let's get a round of applause for Kim.
All right. Hi, everybody. First, I'm going to start with a little bird called trivia. Anybody know it? We will try the other one. Huh? Wood duck? Did I hear wood duck? Because it's wood duck. So I'm Kim Armstrong. I am the stewardship manager for the Land Trust. I'm a Chico native, and I've been proud to call Butte County home for the last 40 years. So you're going to hear a lot about me tonight. I apologize, but I promise there's a reason. So I think that we need to take it back to where all of this started for me, and that is at the Gray Lodge Wildlife Area. So in 2010, I was attending Butte College, didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I had 2 kids, I was married, so a lot of responsibility, and I decided to go into biology after taking a general biology course. And, that kind of worked out well because I already loved being outdoors. I loved animals and wildlife. So why not make a career out of it? So I also recognized that, in order to get a decent job after college, I would need to start putting in the work to get some experience. Because, I think at the time I was working at a coffee shop and that's not the kind of experience they're looking for. So I got online and I was looking at all these jobs and I really I couldn't do them because, I had 2 young kids at home and they would take me away for days at a time. But I found a wood duck box managing opportunity for volunteers. And so my journey started at the Gray Lodge Wildlife Area, managing a section of their wood duck boxes. So for those of you who don't know, wood ducks nest in cavities in old growth riparian trees where the limbs have fallen. And so it takes a long time for these cavities to form. And so in California, these riparian areas are down to about 5% of what they were historically. And so back in the early 1900s, a lot of wood ducks and other waterfowl were market hunted to near extinction. And so they would just go shoot as many ducks as possible and then take them to market. There was no regulations. And then in 1918, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act was enacted to protect all migratory birds, including waterfowl, and set limitations on annual harvests. And then in 1937, the entity that is now U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service erected 486 bark-covered slab wooden boxes, and that represented the first recorded use of artificial nesting structures for wood ducks. So since then, like thousands and thousands of wood duck boxes have been used all over the country, installed by wildlife agencies and private citizens. So after monitoring wood duck boxes for a season at Gray Lodge, I got a job with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife as a scientific aide at the Oroville Wildlife Area. So I was there for 9 years, and during my years with the state, I grew their wood duck box program to roughly 300 nest boxes. So they're not just hung and forgotten about, you have to monitor them. And so you have to go before the seed nesting season, and you have to clean the boxes out, get everything out of there that's the gunk that was in there from last year, put new shavings in. Sometimes you have to make adjustments. Sometimes you have to replace the box. And then starting in about March, we would monitor them monthly. And so we would come to the box, cover the hole, peek in. If a wood duck was in there, we would close it. We wouldn't mess with her and take her out. But if she wasn't there and there was a nest, we would count the eggs, note the conditions of the nest, and so on. And once it hatched, then there was a very specific way you could tell how many eggs hatched. And then you'd clean out the box, and they were often used multiple times during the nesting season. So then not only wood ducks use these nesting boxes, there's a few other species that we would get in our boxes. So this is a nest of lots of fur with cream colored eggs that are speckled in kind of a red. Does anybody know that bird? It's an ash-throated flycatcher. And then we would get American kestrel and barn owl, my personal favorite. And then these guys, so white eggs, really small, a nest of grasses and feathers from other bird species. So we would get tree swallows. And then we get a couple of mammal species. So we'd get western gray squirrels. They've got some little pinkies in there. Looks like she nested right on top of a wood duck box, or wood duck nest. You see all the down in there. She's really keeping cozy. And then about once a season, I would get one of these guys. Now, while I'm not sure if they I've never had them nesting in the box, but this is a ringtail.
Yeah.
I think that they would typically just go hang out in there during the day. But they will kill hens and eat their eggs. So nature's brutal, but everybody's got to eat, right? So wood duck boxes were not the only bird-related work I got to do on the Oroville Wildlife Area. We installed artificial burrowing owl burrows, and we got little guys in them sometimes. So I participated in a lot of annual monitoring for California quail, waterfowl pair counts, span-tail pigeon surveys, ringneck pheasant surveys, and also nesting grebe surveys on the Thermalito Afterbay. We built and installed bluebird boxes. And before I left the state, I built and installed a few barn owl nesting boxes, which is what you see on the screen. Wood duck boxes are just really small, and barn owls can lay 2 to 18 eggs. And so the owl boxes are much better because they're bigger, and so they can rear up more young. All right. So before I get into how I got to band with the state, let's talk about what bird banding is and why we do it. So bird banding is a tool used by researchers and conservationists to monitor and uncover the secret aspects of the life cycles of birds, and they can be crucial for protecting populations. So birds are captured using various methods, and a band is placed around the bird's leg. For geese, it's going to be like a large metal band with a number series on it. Each number is unique and will correspond with an individual bird. When a bird is shot, at least in the case of geese, The hunter can then report the band to the website, which is also found on that band. And it's kind of like a game for hunters. They really enjoy getting the bands, so they're really good at reporting the data because you get a little certificate. Let's see. So yeah, in return, the scientists then get the data back on like where the bird was shot or found dead possibly, and the date. So then they can use that information to see like migratory patterns, manage populations, and potentially set hunting regulations. So the California Department of Fish and Wildlife makes an effort to ban geese in northeastern California every June. At this time, the geese have molted their flight feathers and they're flightless for a couple weeks. So when I heard about this, when I started work for the state in August of 2010, I think I heard about it the following spring, and I was told it was an invite only. And the gentleman there on the tractor, that's Tim Williamson, he was my hiring manager, but he left shortly after I started. And he is one of the team of banding these geese, right? And so I was told, like, if I could get an invite, I could go. And boy, howdy, did I call up Tim, and I'm like, hey, Tim, can I come band? Dave won't let me unless you say yes. And he said, absolutely, come on down. And I'm like Cynthia in that I'm going to do all the things to get to play with the wildlife. So I was allowed to go banding. And so prior to going out banding, the state does a flight over the area to see where the geese are hanging out. Because typically they're done nesting, they've moved their families out into the lakes and they're foraging. So they do a flight to make a plan. And then all the people involved in the monitoring get up super early in the morning. We make our way to the place that we're going to trap. They set up a trap on like the edge of the lake. And then as you can see, we've got these kayaks. So a bunch of us get in these kayaks and we form like a big C. And we push all the geese into the middle very slowly. Takes a long time. We paddle. I think one of our longest paddles was like a half mile, something like that. It's far sometimes. And so, yeah, the whole C. Kind of. I mean, it's not always a C, but at the end, it forms a big C. So anyway, so we start to get these geese into a C formation, and Tim's got a walkie-talkie, and the reason I call it the most fun organized chaos ever is because everybody's screaming at each other through the walkie-talkies, push harder, go this way, go that way, because as you get closer to the geese, if they see a hole in your kayak and you're not moving towards them, they're going to make a break for it. So anyway, so once they get close to the trap, there are water wings that go in the trap that act as kind of a funnel, and then there's like a runway. And so after they do that, they enter these big traps. And the traps have different cells that we can like put geese in different cells. So the first thing we do is we get in there and we take the juveniles out and put them in their own section so that they don't get trampled by the adults. And then we try to make sure there's like not too many adults in one because they can get trampled as well.
You have multiple pins like that if needed.
Yeah, there's usually at least 4 set up. Depending on the amount we expect to capture, there could be more than that.
So they flap and flap and flap, trying to fly.
Oh yeah. I caught a wing to the eye last June. So yeah, and then so we've got our goose wranglers that will go into the pens and hand the geese off. And then we have to sex the birds before they go get a band. And so with geese, you flip them upside down. And you have to just gently pull apart their cloaca to see if they're a male or female. And then they go get a band. So typically we have 2 people banding, one for females, one for males. And then there'll be somebody recording, and they will be responsible for recording you know, whether the goose is male or female, and if it's a juvenile or an adult. And then sometimes we get recaptures, and the recaptures are usually extra saucy. They've been through this before, they know what it's about, and they're so mad to be a part of it again. So we take them directly, they get a fast track directly to the recorder, and we read the band numbers, and then they go on their way. And I think we had a recapture that was banded 23 years prior. So I had no idea that geese could live that long. So that's another cool thing about why we ban stuff.
You put
Okay.
them on species or just whatever you could catch?
It's, oh, I'm sorry, it's all Canada geese. Yeah. And then sometimes I get to handle the little cute juveniles. And this is Melanie Weaver. She's the senior environmental scientist with CDFW who has been leading this for I don't know how long. And then this is just the fun crew. So this is something that I have done annually since 2011, and I have only missed one single time. So while I was working for CDFW, I earned a degree in environmental science with a minor in biology from CSU Chico. And so I had the opportunity to take both ornithology and waterfowl biology with the late and great Jay Boggiato. Yes. So I can safely say that like I would not be the same person that I am today if I hadn't met Jay. I mean, his passion for birds and wildlife and science and his students like just exceeded anything I had ever experienced in a professor. And he was such a great mentor and supporter who just believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, because going through school with two small children was very, very difficult. So I'm so grateful to have had that time with him. So after graduating from Chico State, I got a job with River Partners, where I worked for 6 years as a restoration biologist. For anybody that doesn't know, River Partners is a nonprofit organization founded in Chico in 1998. And they focus on riparian and river restoration throughout California's many watersheds. So my region was from like Olivehurst to Redding, but for over my 6 years, I worked in pretty much all of our offices. So I assisted on projects in Sacramento and Modesto and even the Imperial Valley. So I also got to do various bird monitoring activities while I was with River Partners. So my first spring, I conducted nesting bird surveys prior to mowing a 960 acre restoration project along the Sacramento River, which is just downstream of Hamilton City. So bird nesting surveys are required whenever conducting potentially disturbing activities during the nesting season for birds. And so like depending on the species, that could be anywhere from like January for raptors and as late as August for some songbirds and waterfowl. So River Partners plants their restoration sites in rows, kind of like a farmer would plant an orchard. And then in between the rows, they plant native grass seed. So in order to conduct maintenance activities, the row centers have to be mowed for the safety of other equipment during other times of the season. Like we can't go in there with mowers and have a fire start, you know, after everything's dry. So to do things like weed management and irrigation maintenance. So a coworker and I took turns walking this 960 acre project ahead of mowers. And I think one day my Fitbit recorded 13 miles. It was a long day. So if a nest was found, we just create an exclusion zone around the nest where they can't go until the nest is complete. So this is a lesser nighthawk that I found during those surveys. And this is what their nest looks like. It is just 2 eggs laid on the ground. So they're determinate layers. So every time they nest, they have the same number of eggs. So in this case, it's 2. And for others, another example would be like killdeer, and they always have 4. And so this is them and they blend in really well. You basically have to like see them fly off their eggs to like find the nest. And then, so this is them. They're so camouflaged. And if you see like there's two little babies kind of like under mom's chin. I feel like they're kind of like a magic eye. And then, oh my God. I think the parent had flown off and like, anyway, they're just, I know. They're like fluffy golf balls with wings. Okay, so while working for River Partners, I participated in studies to measure avian species richness and species abundance for riparian land birds. So one of the studies conducted measured restoration success based on population and breeding density objectives for 12 focal species that was outlined in the Central Valley Joint Venture's implementation plan. So the Central Valley Joint Venture is an entity comprised of like 20 public and private organizations who've come together to form a partnership whose efforts are directed toward the common goal of meeting the habitat needs of migrating and resident birds in California's Central Valley. So this plan uses the best available science to establish habitat population objectives for major groups of birds in the Central Valley. So they identified 12 focal species for riparian areas that have specific habitat requirements, and they can act as representatives for other birds with similar needs. So this is an outline for the methods of that project. So first, we needed restoration sites that varied in age. And so we chose projects that were on the Feather and Sacramento rivers, and as far north as Hamilton City to just south of Yuba City. So each project site was broken up into a grid, and survey locations were chosen at random, but far enough away from each other so that each location didn't like overlap. And the surveys were conducted during peak monitoring or peak breeding season, which is May and June. So first, ARUs were deployed at each survey location. So ARUs, or autonomous recording units, are self-contained audio recording devices that can be programmed and deployed to record bird vocalizations. So it's a super cool way to like see what's out there without like having to be out there. So you can program, so they're like little computer units, and you just program them to record for a specific amount of time. And so for this project, they recorded for 4 hours at dawn when birds are most active and singing. So these are really good at getting species richness, or the number of species represented at that specific location. But it does not capture species abundance or the total number of individual species within a given area. So to get the species abundance, we conducted point count surveys following Point Blue's protocol. So that requires a biologist that's trained in not only identifying birds by sight, but they have to be able to identify their calls as well. They stand stationary for 5 minutes and record all the birds that they see and hear, and also record the distance to where the bird was from them. The third method is collecting vegetation data in the form of a releve. So a releve is a standard protocol adopted by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the California Native Plant Society. And it's just a method to collect vegetation data quickly. So I didn't reach out to get the exact results, but it was a positive outcome. But I'm sort of using this to introduce these methods because we'll talk about them in a few minutes. So my end at River Partners, I feel like really came full circle. So this is me and my coworker with our 2 summer interns, and we built wood duck boxes to go out to the Upper Butte Basin Wildlife Area as part of a project that we had on that wildlife area. And then, so the next full circle thing for me is a little story. So part of my job with River Partners was doing seed scouting so that our field staff could then collect ripe native seed so that it could be grown out or seeded on our projects. And so me and my coworker Raquel right here, we met one of our field foremans out at a BLM property where we had permission to scout and collect seed in the Jellies Ferry area, which is near Reading, kind of between Reading and Red Bluff. And so we scouted with him for a while, showed him what we were looking for, and then like kind of left him be. And then we went back to a different project for some other monitoring activities. And so he later calls me up and he's like, hey, I found this bird band and it was on, you know, something dead. I think it might be a turkey. And I'm like, okay, cool. And he had some plants he wanted to show me. So he came over and he hands me the band. And so this is what it looked like. Metal, it's big. But I see the numbers 1138 and like immediately recognize them as the series we use in our goose banding. And so then I'm really excited. So I go to the website, put in the information, and here's the certificate I get. So this goose was banded in 2013 by Melanie Weaver in Alturas, or outside of Alturas in Modoc County. And I was absolutely part of that banding crew. I don't know if I banded that goose, but it was part of my crew. So fast forward to roughly now. In mid-August, I accepted the stewardship manager position with the land trust. So I'll be working with landowners, not only to make sure they're complying with the stipulations of their easements, but I'm excited to work with them on potentially some restoration projects and, you know, how we can create better habitat on their land. Lots of them have seen fire. So I think it's, you know, it's an exciting time to get out there on their properties and see what's happening. So as you might guess, like the land trust is like entirely new territory for me. I'm not used to being in the office this much, so I'm going a little crazy. So I'm really excited to figure out ways that I can go into the field more. Yeah, so I've just been thinking about ways that the land trust can get involved with doing monitoring activities or habitat restoration activities on our lands. So as I go through a couple properties, think about any surveys or monitoring that you think might be good on some of these sites. So this is Big Bluff Ranch in Tehama County. It was at one of the properties that was like way up furthest north and furthest west, I think. So it's 3,776 acres, and it's comprised of oak woodland and foothill pine, chaparral. It's got some grassland, and we've got some riparian areas. They've got this nice creek, and they also have a little lake. So the property owners use regenerative agriculture practices to raise organic chickens, and it also serves as rangeland for cattle. So in August of 2020, 37 lightning sparked fires merged into what became the largest wildfire in California's history, burning just over 1 million acres in 7 counties. So Big Bluff Ranch was actually on the southeast corner of the August complex fire and burned roughly 1,400 acres on the ranch. So 1,000 of the acres that were burned were chaparral, dense chaparral, and it left behind nothing but sticks and ash, which is not surprising. And then the remaining 400 acres burned in oak woodland and grassland, but with much less severity. I'm sorry I don't have pictures for you. I'm just working with what I could find. So some potential bird monitoring I thought that we could do that would like play off of the tools that I took from River Partners is to use those 2 methods of ARUs and point counts to measure species abundance and richness of both, like in comparing the burned versus the unburned habitat. I mean, I know it's been a few years, but still be cool to see how it's responded. And then have a few points in each habitat type. Also, if you're interested in Big Bluff Ranch, they do sell their organic chickens, and you can find them at their website below. All right. So Rancho Llano Seco is in Butte County. The easement was established in 2006. It is 4,235 acres. And so it's also surrounded by thousands of conserved acres of land, which includes U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Llano Seco units and also the Llano Seco unit of CDFW. So this property lies where Little Chico Creek, Angel Slough, and the Sacramento River meet, and it's an old Mexican land grant dating back to 1845. It has grown California crops for over 180 years. So the property is ringed with pools, streams, channels, and oxbows supporting a diverse range of native species. And the land has been managed since the 1980s to restore roosting and foraging habitat for sandhill cranes and other migratory waterfowl. Does anybody know who this guy is? So Western Yellow-billed Cuckoo. It's a secretive long-distance migrant that nests in riparian forests west of the Rockies, and it has been in severe decline over the last century. So many Western populations have been extirpated or reduced to very small, patchy populations. Recent surveys and recovery efforts continue because breeding occupancy is rare and varies year to year. It's currently listed as threatened, and so they require broadleaf riparian forests along rivers and streams with multi-layered canopy and dense foliage for nesting and foraging. They require relatively large continuous patches of native riparian woodland, and that's part of the problem is like there's just not enough continuous habitat, and the habitat that does exist looks a lot like what we're seeing in this photo, like really, really dense, overgrown riparian habitat that hasn't had a lot of disturbance to really have those early successional species come in, like willows and young cottonwoods. And that's the kind of habitat that the Western Yellow-billed Cuckoo really needs. So yeah, like I said, there exist riparian corridors within Rancho Llano Seco, and I think it'd be a cool study to see if we deploy some ARUs, if we'd get anything, just as a start. The Upper Butte Basin Wildlife Area has been kind of a stronghold for this species in the past. They've had like several detections over the last decade or so, and it's not very far away. And ARUs that were deployed by River Partners in 2024 picked up a positive detection for Western Yellow-billed Cuckoo at the Ord Bend unit of the Sacramento River Wildlife Area, which is just a few miles west of this location. So then another method is doing callbacks. So it's where you take their call, you go out into the correct habitat, and you play its call, and you're listening for it to call back. But because the species is listed, it requires somebody that's permitted, like federally permitted, to be able to do this. I was working on that, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get there. But if not, we can contract out for somebody to come do that. So restoration activities, I feel like could be beneficial, is just kind of maybe introducing, like thinning the riparian areas within Llano Seco. That'd be a big undertaking.
Is that portion of Rancho Llano Seco flooded by the Sacramento at all, or no? Is that taken during the seasonal flooding of that preserve?
I mean, it looks like,
That's not the pond or the big lake that's just south of the, the compound where all the tractors and stuff are. What's that big body of water?
Cynthia, do you know where this is located?
Talking about.
Yeah, just south of the main complex.
Okay.
Huge body of water that's stagnant like that.
Yeah.
Duckweed.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like an old oxbow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
But they use it for water. They pump from it. They
Okay.
pump into it.
Sure.
It's a holding tank.
I'm new, Paul, so I don't know all these things yet.
There's a road that crosses that area.
So what's the breeding season of yellow-billed cuckoo and when do they stop flooding those preserves?
Well,
Do they overlap?
does this remain flooded? Yeah, so this is going to remain flooded. So nesting season for yellow-billed cuckoo, so they actually migrate from South America up here to breed, which is wild. And so they're here between June and August. So it's, yeah, so that's the window.
Did you do any work in your 6 years there at, excuse me, at River Fires, at O'Connor Lakes?
Paul asked if I worked at O'Connor Lakes, and I came in at the tail end of that and did a little bit of monitoring at the beginning when I worked there. Yeah,
'Cause,
that was closing out.
yeah. Well, anyway, in 2004, I was there with Tom Griggs before it was planned,
Uh-huh.
still planning. And there was one there.
Nice. Yeah.
I've only heard it once.
So Paul's saying there was one at O'Connor Lakes in 2004
Feather River,
on the Feather River. Yeah.
upstream of the Bear River.
Yep. Upstream of Bear River. Sweet. Anyway, I think it would just be interesting to see if they're there, because who knows? And our last property I want to talk about, which my animations apparently didn't work somehow. Sorry. There's a photo on top of your child sitting on top of the rock that is Lower Deer Creek Falls. So this is the Deer Creek Preserve, and it is the only trust-owned property. We acquired it in 2012. It is 600 acres. So it's surrounded by U.S. Forest Service land and land owned by Sierra Pacific. Habitats are riparian, conifer forests, mixed hardwood, chaparral. So Deer Creek is also a vital spawning habitat for imperiled and listed spring run Chinook salmon. And our property houses a CDFW managed fish ladder at Lower Deer Creek Falls, which is what you see on the screen.
And that group that's there right now, in the photo is the Butte County Collaborative Group. So that's the Fire Safe Council and CAL FIRE and the Resource Conservation District and Forest Service and us and the tribes and a bunch of people, and they came up to our preserve because we're doing a burn plan.
Yes.
The last remaining unburned watersheds in North.
Yeah, so Cynthia was saying that this tour was for the Butte County Collaborative Group, which hosted a lot of different entities, and it's one of the only unburned portions of land in this area. So this is where it lives on the map. That is the Deer Creek Trail that goes through our property, and I think it's 4 miles from end to end. And in 2024, the park fire began in Bidwell Park and burned really close to the edge of the preserve, right, Cynthia?
Basically where you see the little hiking sign in green. Where you see the green hiking sign, that's where they fought the fire from, where the little campground designation is. So it only actually burned 3% of Deer Creek Preserve, but they defended the preserve from being caught on fire basically because of the fish ladder.
Yep.
So good and bad. Now we have to burn it.
So currently the trust is working on a CEQA compliance to be able to add prescribed fire to the landscape so that we can try and avoid the catastrophic wildfires that the surrounding properties have experienced in recent years. So we've contracted out botanical surveys that have looked for and mapped rare species, and then the botanist has provided avoidance measures. We've also contracted with an archaeologist to complete surveys to ensure any archaeological resources aren't affected by the prescribed burn. And we've partnered with the Butte County RCD to write our burn plan and to do our CEQA compliance. So bird monitoring we could do kind of the same thing, like ARUs and point counts before and after surveys. And then I didn't mention, but I have also been a participant of the Sawa owl banding for about the last 10 years. And so the owls are banded, 20 plus year long program out at BSER with Ken and other volunteers. And Ken has been talking about wanting to put nest boxes up in suitable habitat. So we're hoping, yeah, so it sounds like maybe after this burn happens. All right, well, there's a picture of Patrick. So this is Cynthia's oldest son on one of our hikes. This was our salmon hike in September, where we actually got to see spawning salmon in the creek. And so we do a Take a Hike series. We try to do it April through November. This was our lineup for this year. We did not get to Phenology 3, but that's all right. Yeah, so we plan on doing this again next year. And that's a great way for you guys to join us.
And who is the Take a Hike series for?
It's for the land trust. So we run it on our website, landconservation.org.
Free and open to the public.
Free and open to the public.
Prosecutor register. And it's limited to about 20 people.
Why don't you just come up with me? Because this is the end of my presentation.
And our Altica, we've been partnering with Altica at least the last 3 years, I think longer than that.
I have a question. What's phenology?
Ooh.
The question was, what's phenology?
So it's just studying when things arrive and when things bloom, when things migrate. So when we say phenology 1, we're going up there to see what kind of year is it? Is it an early year, a late year, a normal year? What is a normal year anymore? So we're trying to build that over time. I'm a land ethic leader, and so I kind of follow the Aldo Leopold. You go back every year on the same day and record everything you find.
Cool. Are there any other questions? Go ahead.
Do you get involved with invasive species?
The question was, are we involved in invasive species management?
I can actually
Yeah.
say this is the least I've worked with invasive species over my career. So I'm pretty stoked about that. There's a lot of invasive species on the properties, but we are not specifically focusing on those. Some of the land managers might be. And so Kim will get into that. Mostly I don't know, these properties are really well cared for by the land stewards. So I don't see a lot of invasive species out there actually.
Anybody else?
I just have a phenology comment. I was up on the trail from 32 heading toward the property, the preserve, but my dog can't handle that walk. So we only went a half mile. The ladybugs were swarming. There were tens of thousands. And so it's like the 5th time in my life I've caught that. But I assume it was all the way into the preserve,
Yeah.
the ladybugs. They hibernate in the winter.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's definitely a sense of place thing for me too. I remember being a kid and going in the Feather River Canyon, into the Feather River, and seeing that for the first time. And just, I mean, I'm sure that my parents thought I'd fallen in the river because I just sat there and stared at that phenomenon for so long. Any other questions? Yeah, Calvin. So is the question, would we take on a property that's not really in good condition?
Like, they don't have any outs.
That's a great question. So, so we have a couple of conservation easements that we've closed in the last couple of years, include Hamilton Ranch, which is along Deer Creek. It's a rangeland property, and then the Abbey of New Clairvaux. So so not all conservation easements have this, but every modern conservation easement includes a management plan. And it really depends on 2 things. It depends on what are the landowner's objectives for their conservation footprint, and then what is the funding agency trying to help either promote, conserve, restore. And so you put those 2 things together and you work it out. So the Abbey was put into conservation easement on December 21st, 2023. And in that time, they have done about 6 projects that are on their management plan. It includes a lot of stuff like moving water around to get flow in different places to promote or impair certain things from growing. So that's what I've seen. On Hamilton Ranch, he's doing more aggressive things, working with USDA or NRCS and planting things and trying to outcompete some of the star thistle and all that kind of stuff. So he's doing more adaptive management, and that's through the NRCS. And so those 2 easements are really interesting because they're across the highway from each other, completely different habitats, but they were established within 2 days from each other. So their management plans are the same age.
And those 2 properties will be featured at one of our hikes for the Snow Goose Festival.
Thank you, those at home, for participating and joining us. And I'm going to sign off for the Zoom right now. So thank you very much. And I hope to see you soon at an in-person meeting. So thank you.